To anyone who believes that the Bible is what it says it is, I must ask the following. Are you prepared to put your beliefs to the test? Are you brave enough? If there is any hesitation about answering yes to those questions, then I must conclude that your beliefs are not as strong as you'd like them to be. There are cracks in your faith. If you have a deep-down suspicion that logical scrutiny will uncover flaws in your worldview, then is that not a good reason to re-evaluate them? You believe that God wrote or at least inspired the authors of the Bible. I don't. I have reason to believe that people wrote the Bible. You believe that the Bible contains information and content which could not possibly have come from a mere human being. If that were the case, how would you know? How would you be able to tell the difference between words originating from a supernatural entity, whatever that is, and a human who is smarter and better at writing than you are? How would you know? I really don't think it's possible to know that, and I also think that a large percentage of those who call themselves Jews and Christians put their faith or trusts in the pastors, bishops, rabbis, priests, and those who tell them with a straight face that God is real and that He cares about you. I'd be fascinated to know what percentage of believers have read and understood their holy books. I wonder what percentage have read the whole thing, cover to cover, and continue to believe it. I've heard of a lot of people who lost their faith during and after an in-depth reading of the holy texts. I would like to know at least as much as the average believer, preferably more. So much of it just seems so primitive. The human characters often lack compassion and integrity, but the God character really outdoes himself. He demands worship, lays down the law, and describes in great detail exactly how to carry out the blood sacrifices and burnt offerings which seem to be the only way to appease him in those Old Testament days before he decided to send Jesus down. And if that isn't done correctly, he's likely to strike you down with leprosy, burn you, or have you fall into a pit. The laws which Moses relates to his people by Mount Sinai are detailed and totally non-negotiable. I struggle to believe that anything capable of consciously creating this universe would be so petty, fickle, jealous, and vengeful as the Yahweh character in the Old Testament. I do find the scriptures interesting as literature, and a possible semi-historical record of past events in the Middle East. But I find it extremely troubling that so many otherwise sane people literally believe that the Jesus character is going to return soon, and the world as we know it will be destroyed. I cannot see religion as anything other than a deadly virus of the brain which has the potential to cause humanity to self-destruct. At least the literal interpretation of these holy texts. I wouldn't say the same thing about the religious moderates. The authors of the Bible don't want us to think for ourselves. They don't want us to apply logic and reason to the world around us. They don't encourage our innate sense of curiosity. Why? What harm can it do to marvel at the wonder of the universe and look for explanations beyond what is written in Holy Scriptures? Why do the authors of the Bible not want us to get a second opinion? My opinion is that the Bible and other holy books are an attempt to control human populations, to get them to behave in a certain way by punishment and reward, carrot and stick if you like. I reckon that a lot of theists cannot conceive of a world in which there is no God, which is why so many of them say daft things such as atheists hate God or deny God so that they can reconcile their conscience with a sinful lifestyle. Religions require blind faith which is almost entirely at odds with a secular and scientific worldview. Those who wish to convert non-believers like me into believers are pretty much asking the impossible. You see, we grew up. We moved on. We realized that superstitious and magical thinking don't help us understand reality. When a person has learned that particular life lesson, it's virtually impossible to go back. Once a child has seen their parents hiding the Easter eggs, 99% of them will permanently abandon their belief in the Easter Bunny. Religion is more complex, but it's the same basic idea. Once you see how your beliefs were based on faulty logic and unfounded assumptions, there's no going back. It's a sad fact of life that a percentage of the population would kill themselves if they had the freedom to drive whichever fast car or motorbike they fancied, drink however much alcohol they could get their hands on. I've worked with people who spend whatever money they can get hold of on things which are bad for them. It's a lack of self-control. I see no reason why most of such people can't be helped out of that self-destruct mode, but it requires time, effort, and patience. Religion tries to force them to behave by threatening to punish them if they don't. I'd rather encourage them to watch Cosmos and hope that the spark of curiosity within them comes to life. There is a lot wrong with the world, our Western society being no exception. Religions attempt to sort it out, but I think they will fail, mainly because different religions will not tolerate each other. If we assume that the Bible is an accurate historical record, forgetting temporarily the implausibility of miracles and the timescale of Genesis, then the behavior of Yahweh is every bit as abhorrent to us as the worst human dictators. He commanded his chosen people, the Hebrews, to utterly destroy the inhabitants of the Promised Land, a genocide of massive proportions. The killing included the women, the children, and even the animals, in some cases. The reason given by God was that the natives worshipped other gods. We must remember that this breaks the first of the 10 famous commandments dictated to Moses, and it certainly seems to be the one that God cares most about. One of the things about the Bible that seems most strange to me, I'm still assuming it to be an accurate historical record here, is that people are held accountable for the transgressions of others, whether it be ancestors or living relatives. A couple of times God says that he will continue punishing the sinful for 10 generations. So God justifies the capital punishment and genocide by saying that evil must be got rid of. That makes me think of a surgeon removing a tumour and cutting out some extra around it to try to ensure it doesn't return. To my modern sense of morality, the God of the Old Testament is petty, fickle, and lacks compassion for almost anyone who is not a Hebrew or one of the sons of Abraham. Another thing which seems like an utterly alien concept in the Bible is equality. God treats females as the property of males. Whenever I hear the word commandment, I can't help thinking of Basil Fawlty upsetting those Germans.
Hors d'oeuvres which must be obeyed at all times without question.
God treats his people like naughty children, and often they behave like that. The characters in the Bible seem prone to deceit. They lie and steal, they throw tantrums, and they get ridiculously jealous. The God character in the Bible is not only prone to temptation, but he's described as jealous too. This doesn't make sense to me. Why would he get jealous when he could have whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted? Maybe the word jealous isn't the most accurate translation. I don't know. I get the impression that some of these things probably did happen, but due to the oral traditions of storytelling before a lot of it was written down, some inaccuracies crept in and embellishments took place. I suspect that the compilers of these stories put a certain amount of effort into editing and correcting the accounts so that they were more consistent, and in order to make sure earlier prophecies were not left unfulfilled. I've known many Christians who use fulfilled prophecies as an indicator of the validity of their beliefs, and was rather surprised by how often events in the New Testament were literally arranged by the characters such as Jesus, so that the prophecies could be fulfilled. There doesn't seem to be anything particularly amazing about that. It would be like me predicting that a thing is going to end up on top of another thing, and then putting it there, so I can claim that the prophecy was fulfilled. Another thing which the authors of the Bible are keen on is that we are afraid of God. Apparently he wants us to be scared. It's like he's the ultimate boogeyman. To me, this is yet another reason to conclude that he's a made-up character in a work of semi-fiction. In Exodus, the God character apparently spoke to Moses at length on Mount Sinai, and not only gave him a long and detailed list of commandments, but also gave instructions for building a tabernacle, a kind of portable church. I suspect that Moses may have, if he was a real person, may have been quite a smart guy. You see, he was the main man who could communicate with God. The ordinary people in the camp were told that if they saw God directly, they'd die. That seems kind of convenient. So Moses tells the people that God is pissed off with them, pulls off some conjuring tricks with fire, smoke, mirrors and sound effects, and the people are terrified and in a suggestible state of mind. God keeps reminding the general population of how he led them out of Egypt, away from their enslavement and towards the promised land of Israel. As an unbeliever, I would say to anyone who wants to convert me, you have to make sense. It will not be possible to convert me to Christianity if your arguments or reasons for believing are unconvincing. It's as simple as that. You see, if we take the literalists, the fundamentalists, the young earth creationists at their word, we immediately have a problem. This is because the account given in Genesis of the origin of the universe is very different from what we've discovered over the last few hundred years, by carefully and systematically examining all of the available evidence. The Bible tells us that Adam was created as a fully formed adult male by God less than 10,000 years ago. I didn't realize until recently just how important the names and ages of the Bible characters were. We can calculate exactly how many years and generations there were between Adam and Jesus, the two sons of God, all the way past Abraham, Moses, David and others. The trouble is that the evidence of the natural world tells us that modern humans were alive and well during and well before the last ice age, which ended about 10,000 years ago. We know that the Earth is about 500,000 times older than the Bible would have us believe. That is a staggering discrepancy. It's like literally believing that the Egyptian pyramids were built 3 days ago. Why do people laugh at young Earth creationists? Well, there's another reason for you. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.